Welcome to Got Grass, conversations with the legends and leaders of Bluegrass. You've enjoyed live Bluegrass at Guitar Town CT concerts in Hampton, Connecticut since 2008. From Tony Rice, Rouse Stanley, and Doyle Lawson to Tim O'Brien, Sierra Hall, and Billy Strings. Now you can go behind the scenes as we chat with your favorite Bluegrass stars. I'm your podcast host, Chris Worth. Well, hello. Our guest today on Got Grass is Missy Raines. For those of you who don't know Missy, although everybody does, Missy has won 14 IBMA awards, including 10 times Bass Player of the Year. She's got a Grammy nomination in 2020. She's toured with Jim Hurst, Claire Lynch Band, Helen Highwater String Band, among many other groups that she's also led. She's a singer, songwriter, bandleader, teacher. So welcome to Got Grass, Missy.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
If you hear something, there's some birds making a nest outside my window, and I can't do much about it. So I don't know if they're going to bother us, but that's just life. So you are about to go on a major U.S. tour, correct?
That's right. We've actually kind of started, and so we're kind of mid-tour right at the moment.
Oh, so where are you?
Well, I actually happen to be in Nashville, but we left about a week and a half ago, been to Colorado, then we came back east and played a bunch in North Carolina and Georgia and Tennessee, and then as it was on the way, we stopped home for about 36 hours maybe, and then we head out again tonight, so tomorrow we're going to be in Vienna, Virginia, and the DC area, and we'll play a bunch of shows in Virginia, West Virginia, and then on up to Boston and Philadelphia and Brooklyn, New York, and then on into New England and on and on.
Wow, that sounds like a lot
And
of
that's
music.
for the next couple of weeks.
Well, I'm so glad you're busy. Tell me about your new band. I have heard you because you played here at Guitar Town in Hampton, Connecticut, I think last fall. And I also heard you at IBMA on the final night, Saturday night in Raleigh. But tell me about your band that you're playing with right now.
Well, it's like the most it's the most fun I've ever had is playing with these folks, and I hesitated to say it was my favorite band ever and my best band ever, but it actually is both of those things, and I can say it, without any doubt. And I've had lots of great players in my bands before, met some amazing people who remained good friends to this day. But in terms of having all of the pieces at the right time, this is the time, and that band is Allegheny. And so the folks that make up this band, I have Ben Garnett on guitar, Tristan Scroggins on mandolin, Ellie Hawkinson on fiddle, and Eli Gilbert on banjo.
And that is quite a band. I can attest to the fact that I can see why you're happy with this band, because they just rock all night long. They're enthusiastic. They're tremendous players and singers, and I can see the joy in your face playing with them.
I mean, it's just such a great experience every night, and I will say also, like, just being around them, traveling with them, all of the things that matter so much that people don't see actually, from the stage, like the parts of it where to have a band, you have to be with people that you know understand the business, are good people that are responsible, all of those things. They check all of those boxes in spades, but the actual joy of playing music with them is spectacular, because they're all so great at what they do. But we all share a common love of the kind of music that we're doing, so that really adds to it.
I saw a quote of yours recently, maybe on your website, which said that making this record Highlander and having this band has been sort of a homecoming. What did you mean by that, calling it a homecoming?
Well,
And did you actually say that, I guess, would be the first question.
well, I mean, in various ways, I have been saying that because it does feel a bit like a homecoming, um, in the sense that the music that we're playing, this, my idea of traditional bluegrass is definitely it's meant to be. Well, I have actually said the words like it's like a love letter of sorts to bluegrass for me, and it because it's the music. This music is what's in what I have been. It's the result of, I should say, of the influences that I had in my earliest, introduction to bluegrass. The earliest things that I remember as a very, very young child. I mean, I don't remember actually being in this world without knowing and hearing bluegrass music. So this is the result of all these years of the influence of those sounds. And the homecoming part of it, I guess, comes from, um, as some people will know, I've had other bands. I've taken opportunities, and explored, um, versions of and gone down doors that I thought were connected to bluegrass, gone through doors that I thought were connected to bluegrass. Um, and in my mind, though, I never left bluegrass. I just was expanding upon it. I see bluegrass with a very wide lens, and so it felt very natural to me to do the things I was doing. But some people, uh, saw it as, a little bit outside of the bluegrass realm. So I think that that's where the homecoming comes from for some people. For me, it is a time to sort of nestle back into the roots that as I said, that I started with, the foundation that I built this my whole career on. And it does feel really great to be back playing this bluegrass, and honestly, with coming back to it with the years that I have spent out, playing other things and doing, other, um, all kinds of different styles of bluegrass, and then sort of now, hopefully using, some of the things that I've learned, and using those strengths and trying to create this music.
Hmm. One of your bands was called Missy Raines and the New Hip. So the name of that band tells you that you're kind of heading off in some little different side direction than strictly bluegrass, correct?
I mean, yes, I definitely, um, with the new hip, the intention behind that band was, um, to not have any, uh, preconceptions about what it would be. I didn't want to have any, restraints on what songs we might choose to cover or write to fit it. So, in other words, if I wanted to play, a jazz kind of thing, like a sort of a dog music, to me, it felt like things that, you know, leaned in the direction of David Grisman and Tony Rice back in the 70s when they were playing things that people called dog music. Um, uh, I felt I wanted to have the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do as long as it sounded good with the instruments that we had. And that was the entire intention of the band, was to just have the freedom to explore whatever I wanted to. And I wanted to explore some, the rhythmic ends of things. So I did have a drummer in the band. And again, it was all about exploration and freedom. But you have to you have to realize that still I'm still me, and I'm still a bluegrass bass player from West Virginia, and that's how I that's how saw myself. That's how I continue to see myself. And so when I started doing these other things, I still felt this element of bluegrass, this connection to bluegrass, and how that came out. It was still going to have this really strong tie to bluegrass because I can't change me, and also because I certainly didn't spend I haven't studied jazz I haven't studied all these other kinds of music. I have studied bluegrass. So for me, it wasn't a huge departure, but it was definitely a an invitation to have the freedom that that I don't actually have in this band. So and then the intention behind this band, Allegheny, it was completely the opposite. I wanted to have a band that sounded like a bluegrass band, and I keep saying sort of adding to that my version of it, because I think that's always individual. But I there are definitely songs that it would be like I would say, well, no, I don't want to do. I don't think that fits for this band, um, and it's not really a lack of freedom, but it's just a choice that I want it to sound a certain way.
Right. So you mentioned that bluegrass, I guess, is in your DNA, would you say? I mean, you grew up with it. You're from West Virginia, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I,
So as a kid, was there music around the house? Were your parents musical? Siblings? How did that all work? Music.
well, so there was definitely music on the stereo and stuff from the get go, and my parents were enthusiasts. They didn't really play. My mom definitely didn't play, but what they loved to do more than anything was to see live music, and they also, as I said, it was playing on stereo, but they really loved going out to see live music. So they were doing that before I was born, and by the time I came around, I spent uh, sometime early in when I was first born until I was about 4 years old. Didn't travel very well because, well, so this actually ties into the reason. One of the main reasons I named that first band the New Hip was because I had a hip replacement quite young due to um, a complication at birth with my right hip, and so that led to not being able to travel for about 4 years. So by the time from birth. So by the time I started being mobile, as my mother would say, the multi-day bluegrass festival had started, and so we started going to those, and so that was one of my earliest memories is just being at a multi-day bluegrass festival. And so I was exposed to bluegrass that way. I also had older siblings, and they were they played their music on the stereo at home, so there was everything from southern rock to pop to classical being played. So it was a very musical household. um I think that the main reason that I started playing though was because I was seeing people play these instruments in person, and then we also had lots of friends and neighbors that played music, and my parents some right around in West Virginia, but also a lot where I grew up in West Virginia is just across the state line from from Cumberland, Maryland, up way up in Western Maryland. So it was way up
Hmm.
there, and um, it's really only about 150 miles west of Washington D.C. area, so we had pretty great access to get down to that part of the world where there was a lot more people, and at the time, a, the Washington D.C. and that metropolitan area was actually a very large hub and major hub of bluegrass music, um,
Hmm.
way more than say like Nashville is these days, but Nashville at the time was not. So anyway, we had access to an area of the world that there were so many great bluegrass bands coming out of, and it was being played on the radio on major radio stations, and there were places where you could hear it live throughout the week. So I had exposure to a lot of it, and that's
Hmm.
how it really all started.
Right. I'm going to assume that you probably didn't start out on the bass as a kid, or did
No,
you?
No, I didn't. I mean, I actually started playing piano. There was a piano in the house, and I started playing that. Then I switched to guitar, and I asked my parents if I could, uh, stop playing piano. Not. I didn't stop playing piano, but I didn't want to take lessons anymore because the lessons were very boring.
I
And
get
so,
it.
so I started taking guitar, and then, and that was. I thought that was it. I just sort of thought about, trying to be Lester Flatt or Mac Wiseman. But um, then, as I said, my dad was playing with we had friends who played in jams and stuff weekly, and I guess some talk was had with some of the adults that they might need a real bass if we wanted to do some gigging. And apparently my dad was wanting to do that, so he went and found a bass, and it ends up that it's the bass that I still play because he found a really good one, but I don't think he actually understood that at the time. None of us did. And
Oh
brought it
man,
he brought it home and was going to play it himself and did play it a little bit, but I was like 11 or something, and had a little bit of background in music, and I started playing it too. And it's difference between, just a little precocious kid that already has some guitar knowledge under her belt, and I loved playing the bass. And so my dad just, I mean, he loved that I was playing it, and he didn't really play it a whole bunch more after that. He just carried it around for me.
well that's good. So at some point when you're playing the bass and other, guitar and other things, did you realize, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe I should consider being a professional musician? Was it that simple, or how did you evolve into um, your life of music?
Well, I mean, I didn't, I don't know, you have that kid mentality that you can do anything, and I was certainly told that I was good, but I don't know that I really believed it. But I I I think I reached a certain point when, in high school, when other kids were starting to think about college, and I started to think about college, and I didn't like the idea of going to college. It sounded
Mhm.
it sounded very limiting to me, and so I went to my parents and said, I don't want to go to college. I want to play bluegrass. And
Yeah.
my parents were like, sure, and I'm thinking, you know, bless them, they if they had realized just how, difficult it would be actually, and challenging the life would be, I'm sure they might would have talked me into doing something else. But I think they were so excited and that I was so happy with what I was doing. And they never pushed for me to get a degree or anything. And they were very much supportive to help me try to get to play music. You know, the, Neither of them had gone to college. My one of my brothers did go to college. One of my sisters actually went to school as well. Uh, but to say that we were an academic family would not be the case. So I think in their minds, they thought that it would just be great if I could just play music, and they um, I don't think they thought much further than that about it. And I I'm really glad I did what I did. I wouldn't change it. But so when I got out of high school, I just went and joined a band. Now, it wasn't quite that simple. It took me a couple of cities and towns and bands to figure out like a good place to be for a few years, and I did find that really good place. But um, and then things went on from there, and then you just start figuring out all the things that you need to do, and I just kept doing it. And so that's how you get there.
Where was that place you found that you thought was um, a good place for you to be to progress in music as you kind of grew up out of your high school years? And where was that?
I,
Nashville?
la- no, I landed in Charlottesville, Virginia,
Hmm.
and I was playing in a band called Cloud Valley, and the person who put that band together was Bill Evans, the banjo player,
Right.
and there he had been. I had met him at a festival a few years earlier, like maybe when I was a junior in high school, and we hit it off, and he said, "You really need to come to Charlottesville and play in my band." And I said, "I really need to graduate from high school first." And and
Mm.
so um, but eventually I did end up there, and what was it was so great for many reasons, mainly because Bill is such a great guy, and is like a brother to me to today, and Steve Smith and Charlie Ranke, who was playing in the band at the time. They were all just good folks and good people, and I also have, we remain friends today. um, but it also, Bill was a really great band leader in that he, was looking at it from as a business, and he handled things. I mean, none of us really knew, everything of what to do at the time, because we were all quite young, but he really handled things really well. So I got a good introduction into what it would be like to just sort of try to handle and do this for a living from a much more business aspect than I had ever witnessed before. So, and I also loved the area. I loved being in Charlottesville. I loved the town. It was at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia, and it was also really close to the ocean. And then I ended up meeting my husband there, and we got married there, and so it was just uh, all very much meant to be.
Nice. Um, Bluegrass was and is less so now, but pretty male dominated. I'm sure when you were starting out, was it challenging to be a woman bass player in a pretty much a man's bluegrass world at that point?
I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, I, I didn't see it. I don't know that I saw it as challenging as much as I just thought, well, this is just the way it is, and I just have to do things differently sometimes. I have to do things harder sometimes, but then sometimes you got to do things easier. So there was also, like, I know that I didn't get gigs because I was a woman, but I
Hmm.
also know that I got a few gigs because I was a woman. And I would prefer to have neither of those situations, to be
Right,
honest.
right,
um but but they did both exist. And so i I mean, absolutely, there was mostly attitudes that were annoying and
right,
tiresome. um there But I was walking through doors that women before me had already opened, and so I had it way easier than those before me. But just like the younger women today have it easier than I did.
right.
um, but we still have a long way to go.
Did they expect you to go get coffee and stuff like that at certain points, or was it as basic as that, like you're the woman to go get the stuff kind of thing, or
Well, no one that I worked for did that, but like when you would be at an event, a lot of this I remembered, a lot of most of it was like from either the buyers, the promoters, or the sound crews. um and uh they would, and then sometimes just general public, but a lot of times they just assume, like, if I'd be there, they'd assume that I was just sort of someone's girlfriend or something, and I was just along for the ride. um so then they'd be all surprised that I was actually part of the band. There was that, and then there would be um, sound people would not talk to me about sound. They would about my sound on the bass. They would talk to one of the guys, and of course I was playing with really great people, so they would always say, "Oh, we'll just talk to her," and then they look at me like I was an alien. But they um, and stuff like that. But I mean, it didn't happen all the time. It just every now and then. but the biggest thing I think that I experienced, I remember, so before, or actually after I played with Cloud Valley, I played with the great Eddie Adcock for years,
Right.
and that that was a really interesting experience for many reasons. But one of the things that I remember was there was a while there where Eddie and I, it was just we were just a trio, Eddie and his wife Martha Adcock
Hmm.
and me, and they he didn't have a booking agent at the time, so I um said, well, I kind of could, I feel like I could do this, like I can book us. And he's like, sure, try. And I said, so I did. And I enjoyed actually some of the the office kind of a managerial part of that a little bit strangely. And it was so I was booking gigs for us, and then when we would get to the gig, we play the gig, and most of the contacts that I used were, you know, venues or whatever that Eddie had already played, or they all knew who he was, of course. They didn't know who I was. And so but I had made the deals. And this is back when, there were no emails, you were calling people on the phone. So I had,
Sure.
in most cases, literally talked to every one of these people. So at the end of the night, I'd go to get the money. And a lot of times, these men would look at me and say, well, I'll pay Eddie, and
Oh.
they
Hmm.
would want to do the deal with Eddie. And
Hmm.
so I went back to Eddie and I said that, and he looked at me. He says, you tell them you made the deal, you take the money." So I would go back to them and say, uh, "I made the deal. Let's do this. Let's do this." And they would all be fine. They were all like, okay. And like, but what I loved about it was Eddie just like having my back and just making that happen. But also it allowed me to create relationships with these buyers that I ended up then, of course, working for in various combinations for years to come. And I think that it gave me a sense of responsibility and a sense of credibility within the business.
Yeah. Did you always sing, or did you just play bass at first and singing evolved in your musical repertoire?
Oh, I sang early on. My mom really wanted me to sing. My dad really wanted me to sing, but I wanted to sing. Like I used to sing in front of the mirror with the dust mop propped up against a
Oh
stool
yeah,
in
I
a living
remember
room.
those days. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I sang into that dust mop for a long, long time. And imagine I was Lester Flatt or Bobby Osborne or Mac Wiseman, all those people. I wanted to sing, but when I started singing, I got really shy about it and didn't think that it sounded good. So I backed off from it. Well, in the meantime, but my parents still really wanted me to sing, so they pushed hard, which made me push back. So I kind of shut down a little bit with the singing. The bass playing I was fine with. I could do that all day long, and I had a lot of confidence. But so the answer is like I kind of sang, but I didn't do it like with this. When you sing, you have to have some confidence, but at the very least, you just have to not be shy about it. You just have to let it out. And when you don't have those two things, it's not going to be as strong as it could be. So I think that uh, I I just kind of fought it for a long time.
Hmm.
But I always knew I wanted to sing, and there were songs that I was hearing. I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. It wasn't until I started playing in a duo with Jim Hurst, and when I actually really started singing and for real. And honestly, if it hadn't been for the graciousness of Jim and his beautiful encouragement and support for me to sing, I don't know that it ever would have really gotten this far, because we just were doing a duo, and it was like, okay, you have to sing. And I was like, well, I want to. It's just I haven't ever had this opportunity to pick the songs that I wanted to sing, make them sound the way I wanted to do, and I got that in that setting. And so that was really the beginning of it. And so that was not even until like the late 90s. So that's how late I was coming into it.
Right, right.
So, you know,
Well, Jim, I know Jim. He's played here quite a few times, and I've heard him with you on record and with Claire Lynch, and he is a he's a really nice guy, a very encouraging, great guy. And also, I'd imagine singing with him, he's a great singer and harmony singer. So I would imagine you guys could work out your parts. Whoever's singing the lead, he could sing the harmony or vice versa, right? I mean, he's a very versatile singer and a good singer.
he is one of the greatest musicians I've ever known, singing
Yeah.
and playing wise, dexterity, on the spot, uh, whatever. Yeah, he's brilliant. And but he's also the really great thing about Jim's musicianship is, as I said, like the support that he does. And it's like he listens better than most people do when he's playing with you, so he's immediately just playing back and forth with you. And that's so I was just so lucky to get to play with somebody like him at a time when I was really, um, developing in so many ways. And just that time playing with him as a duo, it really set me up to try to be a band leader, try to be a singer, and try to do all the things that I'm doing now.
So that really gave you the confidence to sell a song, I guess would be the from that point on, you realize I can sing lead, I can sing harmony, I can sing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it still took a long time for me to to
Yeah.
to get there, but yeah, no, if it hadn't been for that experience and for to have done it with somebody, to have done it with Jim Hurst, it wouldn't have been. I don't think I would have gotten there because he was just so supportive and, um, just encouraging, and that really made the difference.
Yeah. So I know for a fact that playing bass and singing at the same time is a challenge, right? Am I correct?
You are correct.
I know some bass players, and they just find it so hard to do both. And I understand why, because the bass is the rock and the vocal is the sweet thing that goes all over the place sometimes. So how do you was that hard to learn to be lead singing and playing bass and fronting a band?
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's every day it's a challenge.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, also I think also, I mean, like bass playing for me is a bit more natural, and that's something that sort of is there. But then, becoming a singer, and with all the nuances that come with phrasing and figuring out how it is that you want to do things, and then making that work with the bass playing. Yeah, it's just something I have to work on all the time.
Mhm.
And I find that, I definitely have my own way of phrasing, when it comes to singing. I hear things a certain way, um, and I think that I like to think that it's kind of cool and unique, and but it's definitely, you know it, it is what it is. And so when you're singing harmony with me, you're just gonna have to. I can tell that, like, the best harmony singers, like Ellie Hawkinson, who plays fiddle, she's so
Mhm.
great.
Yep.
She's such a great singer, and she is such a great harmony singer, and she just follows everything I do, and just amazing. And I know that the way I phrase sometimes is very different than what the average person would do. And it's not that it's better or anything, it's just different. And but I think that's what, I have to just do what feels completely unique to me, and that's what comes out.
So when you're playing bass and singing lead, do you feel like your bass playing changes, becomes more simple? Do you notice any correlation between the phrasing of your vocal and your bass playing at the time, or is it just subconscious?
Well, sometimes I do notice, a difference, and that's not good. So, so what you want, the ideal thing is to for there not to be a difference in the playing. So yeah, the goal is for it to just be subconscious and for you to be able to play whatever it is that you want to play and still sing what you want to sing. Uh, one of the greatest examples of all of this is within the bluegrass world, particularly, is John Cowan, um, who maybe some would say he's not exactly a traditional bluegrass player, but he is a bass player and a great singer who has been in one of the top bluegrass bands ever and still doing all those things. And I've talked with him about singing ba- and playing bass at the same
Right.
time. And how does he do it? And he just, just taking each element and learning them uh, so that they feel just second nature, and then bringing them together.
Yeah. I can think of in the pop rock field, um, guys, well, bass and singing or playing drums and singing. There are very few that can do it well, that can keep the beat and phrase a song. It just seems like two parts of your brain that really have to. I don't know how you separate them,
Yeah,
but yeah, yeah. So it's a constant challenge to kind of keep yourself playing the rhythm and then keep that over there and then sing the song over here and not have the two meet kind of in
yeah.
the middle. Yeah. Um, I've noticed, and this maybe is your approach to music, but you always seem to surround yourself with a lot of great young players. Is that a conscious effort on your part to like nurture and bring along young players, or you just like playing with young people because of their energy, or is that just the way it worked out?
It's definitely it, it's not necessarily conscious that I look for young players, although it ends up being young players. I do really love young young player energy and enthusiasm. It that really pushes me, and I enjoy that a lot. But it honestly has a lot to do with just having players that might be at a point in their life where they're a little bit less anchored to being at home all the time or having certain things. As you get older, things change for you, and your requirements are different. So for me, it's nice to have people who are like, oh yeah, I can be gone for 2 weeks at a time, or I can you know spend 3 days rehearsing or whatever. So that definitely plays into it. But yeah, as a rule, I typically really like that the energy and enthusiasm that comes with younger folks. um, I mean, let's face it, anyone who's my age is going to be like just grumpy.
I was just going to say something like that. I can relate to that completely. I was in my field, which was old house restoration. All of my coworkers were the same age as I was, and eventually we just became a bunch of grumpy old men. And it really was, I don't know, kind of lost its pizzazz after a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course there are great exceptions to that rule, but I mean, and then I call them the kids anyway, but the kids they're grumpy too. It's just funnier.
A different kind of grumpiness.
They can be grumpy too, but it's just
Yeah,
hilarious when they get grumpy. And but anyway, yeah, it's just mostly it's just finding like people who really still love to be out on the road. Because actually, I've played a few times with some younger people who just don't want to do all the things that come with being a musician, and time spent on the road or whatever. And I'm just thinking, that's it is a certain kind of life, and either you want to do it or you don't. And if you don't, there's so many easier ways to make a living. So
yeah, right. Yeah, I'm always amazed at well, I mean, veteran musicians like yourself who've been around and played and toured, you know what to expect. You know when to say no. You know if you need a break. But the young musicians that go off, piled into a van, driving all over the country, um, I think it's got to be a rude awakening for them after a while just how hard it is, not the music playing, but the rest of being a musician, the travel, the bad food, all that stuff, right? It's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I saw another nice quote of yours, which I really like, and I don't even know where I saw this one, but it says that you've called your music, quote, this fine line between respect and rebellion. And I love that. I don't really know exactly what you mean by that. I have an idea, but I was wondering, did you say that, and can you explain that?
Um,
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I like the quote.
well, yeah, I didn't actually put it in those words, but I had, but it was, but I liked that the writer saw that within me because I do, um, the rebellion part of it is is to me as important as the respect because for me the rebellion part of it may be a little misleading because I see it more as it's as I was talking about earlier is the exploration of it of music
Right.
and
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
innovation because the innovation will almost always lead um, to sometimes create sides or will sometimes appear as rebellion, but it's not. It's just pushing an edge. So, for example, I mean, Jimmy Martin and the Osmond Brothers brought drums on stage. They had, uh, in some cases, full set of drums or just a snare on
Right.
stage back in the late 60s. I mean, in 50s, they did all those things that made people go, "Oh, what's that?" you know, like what's going on here? And but they did it. Monroe did it. Monroe had electric guitar on early recordings. He had accordion. He had all
Hmm.
those. He tried a lot of different things.
Right.
Um, so it was a combination of exploration and innovation. I think they were all trying to find things that worked for them, that that and to me that falls into a line of rebellion of like, okay, I don't I'm not going to go along with your idea that it has to be one certain way. I think there can be other ways that it can be. And certainly folks like Sam Bush came along and said, okay, here I have learned at the feet of these greats, these Bill Monroe and Jesse McReynolds and all these folks, but here's my idea of what it can be. So is that, it's innovation, but it's also a bit of rebellion. And so I'm not putting myself in those people's shoes by any means or comparing myself to those people, but I think that that mentality, um, is something that I witnessed firsthand by being at those early festivals and watching all these first generation and then later second generation, third generation people come along and just stretch out that wide band of bluegrass to see how far they could take it. And so to me, that's what made bluegrass. It was like it was all of these things. It wasn't just, oh, there's just these people playing one thing and then everybody else is doing something different. I I saw it as just all bluegrass.
When you think about, Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass, I mean, there was no bluegrass tradition when he started. So he was inventing and being pretty revolutionary from day one. I think people forget that, they think, oh, you can't play it differently than Monroe did because that's the tradition. But he created a lot of that tradition. So he was certainly pushing the boundaries of music back then.
Absolutely. And also what you have to remember is that all of those people who were also his peers, his uh that were playing music at the same time, people like Mac Wiseman and Osmond Brothers and all those guys that were coming along just after him, or definitely those still playing the same time. Um, they did not think that they were playing bluegrass music, and here's why: because they believed that they were doing their own music. Bluegrass to them, and I have this straight out of like Mac Wiseman's mouth. I asked him this question in an interview years ago.
Hmm.
um, did you think you were playing bluegrass music? And he said, why, no. He said, I was playing Mac Wiseman music.
Mm.
And Sonny Osborne said the same thing. It was like they were doing their idea of with the combination of instruments that they had, with the voices that they had, with what they were doing. The only person in their mind that was playing bluegrass was Bill Monroe, because that was the name of his band.
Right. Just coincidentally, that's how it got named, right? The Bluegrass State. I mean, what
Um,
if you'd grown up in Rhode Island, would have been the, I don't know, different name to Bluegrass.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, so it really did come down to that. And that's the part of it that I think people don't always remember, is that it's almost a disservice to those great artists, that were um, playing at the same time, to just lop them into a bluegrass category, although I understand the whole use of the word now completely. But we do have to remember that it was the name of a band, and it became an easy way to segregate, or uh, uh, to distinguish what that kind of music was, as opposed to country or whatever. Although they was also called hillbilly.
Right.
But so yeah, and then honestly, like when by the time Flat and Scruggs, were ruling the world and playing, on the soundtracks of the Beverly Hillbillies and all those things, they were not even using the word bluegrass to to promoters. They weren't calling themselves that, because the reason they weren't was because at the time, the word bluegrass was not a happy word. Like, buyers didn't want to hear that. They didn't. It was just considered not sellable. And so, there's a lot of history there that folks don't think about. Um, but yeah, I mean, sure, it's a great catch-all, and it works really well for us these days. But I think if we go too far down the rabbit hole with it, it becomes troublesome. And so yeah.
I guess like all labels, I mean, it's partly just to be able to decide which record bin you put the album in. You got to call it something.
Well,
Um,
that's a great point. I mean, definitely those labels became useful. They also became a detriment at some point, but they remain both things, useful and detriment, to this day. But that's right, yeah, record stores, you had to have a label. Where are we going to put it? How am I going to find Flat and Scruggs? Well, go to Bluegrass. But at the same time, um, if somebody thinks they don't like bluegrass, then they might never find out all these other artists.
yeah. Um, so where do you see what we call bluegrass or acoustic string folk music? Where do you see the music headed? Do you see it in heading in a good direction, or is it floundering? Is it flourishing? How do you see it right now?
Oh, I think bluegrass and old time and string music and Americana music is utterly flourishing right now.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah, it's on fire. It's popular. The amount of young people who are embracing it and learning it, and um, playing it. If you look at the bands that are so really leading up, um, the real traditional side of the bluegrass scene these days, they're all pretty young. And I'm talking about like the Cody Norris, and um oh I, my brain is not serving me well, but there's a couple of other, Poe Ramblin' Boys. I mean,
Right.
pretty
Yep.
those guys are pretty young, relatively speaking. They're definitely not like as old as me out there trying to do traditional bluegrass, but they're playing to, um, they're doing that really hard edged stuff, and it's going over so well. And then of course then you add into the really young folks like Molly Tuttle and Billy Strings, who are bringing, maybe not quite as hard edged traditional bluegrass, but still really really great bluegrass. um, music, and they're bringing it to this huge wide range of ages. And um, so I don't think bluegrass honestly has ever been in a better place.
I'm glad. I agree with you. I'm glad to hear you say that too. I mean, it seems like, um, as you say, Molly and Billy, and I just interviewed Bronwyn, the fiddle player with Molly, and she's like her life is a whirlwind of success in the last 2 years. Unbelievable what's happened. And I think so. I think yeah, I think those young bands are bringing in, young dreadlocked rock fans and stuff. But they also, they do the traditional stuff too, as well as their own original stuff. So I think it's really they're educating a whole new generation of listeners, right, about what the music was and is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, oh, I forgot to ask you this question early on. So the name Missy, is that were you always called Missy? Is that your legal name, or was that just a nickname you picked up at some point?
uh, my name is Melissa, and
Melissa.
yeah, but apparently my dad started calling me Missy when I was just an infant, and so it's sort of stuck. But and that's really pretty much all that anyone ever has called me, except for my brothers and my sister would call me Melissa, and they still always called me Melissa, and my parents called me Melissa when they wanted to get my attention. Um, but
Right.
and then I went through a very brief, typical, I guess, coming of age time when I was about 19. I said, "Oh, I want to be introduced as Melissa on stage." And there's one record that I made with Cloud Valley that has Melissa Raines on it, and then that lasted about 6 months, and I decided that it was pretty stupid, so I went back to Missy.
Yeah, I guess you were just Missy, right? You weren't Melissa in the world of music.
No.
Um, so going back in time, thinking about we're talking about these early legends and first generation bluegrass people. If you could play as a duet with anybody in the past, um, of bluegrass or hillbilly or country, whatever you want to call it, was there anybody you would love to get up on stage with and do a half-hour set from somebody from the past who's no longer alive? Any wish list there?
Oh. If I could do, like, you mean play in a band with, or
If
just,
you could go on stage with Bill Monroe and just sit there for an hour and play songs together, or anybody, who would you pick? Any particular person that you just loved and admired so much from the
well,
past?
I mean, all of them for sure, but I think that of who I would really love to play with and try to would be and I met him and stuff, but just very briefly. I'd love to play with Jimmy Martin. Um
Ah,
yeah, because there were things about the things that n- that he thought and felt about rhythm that I think it would be amazing. I think that um when I got to see him, I mean, I saw him a lot as a kid performing, and to be quite honest, I mean, he was often often drunk on stage,
right.
and he could still sing, but it was but it was I wasn't old enough to really get it. And then when I did get a little bit older and I saw him, I didn't get a chance to like talk to him or anything. But I would love to pick his brain, or just be. I don't think. No, I don't. I take that back. I don't want to pick his brain, but
It's a
but I
good
would.
one.
I would love to have played with him and try to play with him while he was playing guitar in his day, like at his when he was in top form. And uh yeah, I would love to have played with Monroe, but I think that but I really think that I I think playing with Jimmy Martin would be like the most incredible experience.
Yeah, that would be quite a rhythm duo, wouldn't it, with you two?
Oh my gosh. Well, and we'd have to have a banjo and a mandolin in there too, just to get the full experience. I tell you, I would love to play with J.D. Crowe and Jimmy Martin and uh, was it Paul Warren, I guess, or Paul Williams. Paul Williams.
Hmm. Right.
That band, I would have loved to have played in that band.
How about people playing around today that you may know or may have met but had never got the chance to perform or record with? Any regrets about, or maybe they're still on your bucket list of people you'd love to love to perform with, whether they're bluegrass or whether they're country or hip hop or whatever. Anybody out there that would be, wow, that would be so cool for you?
Oh, well, there's tons of those people. And not over yet, so it could have,
No, I know. I'm not ruling it out. I'm just wondering if anybody's you've been like hoping to get together with and just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Well, there's the bucket list of things that will never happen, but it would be a blast, like things like Bonnie Raitt or something like that. But
Hmm.
uh, but the as far as like the within the sort of I'll call it the, I don't know, acoustic world, which is just to make it a little easier. I mean, there's so many people that would fall into that, but I'm a huge fan of like Sarah Jarosz and uh, Aoife O'Donovan, and and I would love to collaborate with them sometime. Um, but and it would be an amazing thing. But gosh, yeah, I mean, so many people come to mind because there's such great music out there today, and there's so many people doing wonderful things that it's very inspiring to hear what's happening out there. And the best way to, I think, to feed off of what's happening out there for me is to just try to push myself to do what makes me me, like, and there's no way to compete with what's happening out there when you hear like, oh, that's a really cool thing, I should do something like that, and it's like, no, that's not the right path, because the only way to do it is to do what you do, and
Hmm.
just try to do what you do really well, and um it trying to figure that out can take a while. Some people figured it out pretty early on. It took me a long time to
Yeah.
figure out what it was that I wanted to do. But I think that the part of the reason that it took me so long was because I saw myself as a bass player early on, and I kind of, and I don't want to say the word, I saw myself just as a bass player, because that sounds like like it's almost derogatory, but or less meaningful, but I don't mean it that way. But I did just see myself as a bass player. Like, for years, I thought, well, I'm just going to play and try to make this band sound good and try to do that. And I wasn't thinking, I did want to have my own band, but I didn't think I could make it happen. That was the problem. I didn't see a path to making it happen. But then when I finally opened up those doors in my mind and thought, oh, I can make it happen, then I started thinking about how to make it happen and what would be my strengths. So it took a while.
Yeah.
But I think that would be the key to tell people to do too, is out there, who, if you're out there and you just think, oh, there's just already so much great stuff out there, how could I possibly do something within this environment? And the answer is absolutely to just find what makes you unique, and
Right.
make it great.
I mean, I don't see you with Sarah Jarosz or Aoife O'Donovan as a far-fetched project, but who knows?
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I mean, I I like that you said that, but there's so many things like that out there.
Right. I'm going to ask you one more question, and we're going to wrap it up. It's been an hour almost already, and we've covered a lot of things. I'm going to ask you a non-musical question, and that is, what would people be surprised to learn about you, Missy?
Oh my gosh.
The hardest question is the last,
It really is. What would
and
be
you
the
don't
most?
have to. You don't have to answer it. I just thought it'd be if something came to mind. It would be fun to hear that something that's not bluegrass or bass oriented.
Yeah. Um, so maybe they might be surprised to learn that uh that I can watch reruns of Murder She Wrote for days.
Oh, well, you heard it, folks. The
I
truth is
mean,
out there.
yeah, I have this whole thing about Angela Lansbury, and it's very, I mean, I know what the show is. I get it. It's so, in some cases, it's not all that great. It's very dated, but for some reason, I find it incredibly calming.
Yeah. Well, in this day and age, calming is a good thing.
It is. It
It's a
is.
good thing. Good thing. Well, I'm gonna end it there. I really want to thank you, Missy. It was a fascinating chat with you. I give you the best of luck on your tour all over with your great new band, and I hope to see you sometime again up here at Guitar Town in Connecticut. Um,
Yeah.
always love when you come play with various configurations, whether it be a full bluegrass band or a duet with somebody or whatever it might be. So, thanks again for chatting, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been great.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast, and thanks for listening. Visit our website, guitartownct.com, for concert and podcast schedules, or just to send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.